hosting a panel, and I'm gonna have some incredible gaming founders coming up from some dope-ass games. So I'm gonna sit right here, and I'm gonna call up some great people. Kohji from Parallel, Head of Game Design. Jenna Greenfield, Chief Operating Officer at Wanderers. Frank Wilder, who is the co-founder and art director of Wilder World. 3 impressive games joining me on the stage. 3 incredible founders building dope stuff, all of different stories, backgrounds. I would love it if you could just all introduce yourself and just give us a slight understanding of the games you're building because they're dope. But there are some people here who have no clue what Web3 is. They're coming from GDC, and I think it would be very important to hear some of that.
My name's Kohji. I'm a co-founder and head of development and design at Parallel. Our main offering right now is a digital TCG. So if you're familiar with like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or Runeterra, kind of similar to that, competitive card game. And we chose a card game because it's ingrained in the player base of all card games is the idea of ownership. So it just made sense from a Web3 perspective. And then we also have another project on the go that we've just sort of announced called Colony, which is an AI, we like to call it a 1.5 player game. I won't bore you with all the details of Colony. If you want to know more, I don't know, find me, go on the web, whatever. But yeah, just a lot of exciting stuff on the go.
My name is Jenna Greenfield. I'm co-founder and COO of Wanderers. We started as an NFT, all animated with music and lore in August of 2021. And yeah, we are building a roguelike dungeon crawler PC game with trading card twist. And we also have a universe and platform with meta games and experiences, 3 full-length music albums, and a comic book on the horizon. So, yeah.
We are building a massive scale simulation, and we're in active development. The way in which we're approaching building the simulation is through rolling out various experiences over time. And as you saw in the trailer, we are starting with racing. And yeah, those are all in-game assets that you can own and use. And the vehicles are all on-chain. All the assets can be modded. And yeah, there's competitive racing. So thanks for having me.
And I want to ask everyone on this panel, if you were here in 2020, 2021, how has the gaming landscape shifted and how is the narrative of what you're building shifted based on the vision and what we've seen in the space over the last couple of years?
I think the biggest thing that's shifted, right? Like anyone who was around in the space, especially the gaming space in Web3 in 2020, there were a lot of projects selling ideas. Yeah. You would go to you would see a pitch meeting and it would just be like a spreadsheet or a Google Doc or something like that. And now we actually see product. Yeah. We saw a bunch of videos. You can probably play a bunch of these games. You can go to the floor and see a bunch of these Web3 games. And it's not just ideas anymore. People have to deliver. And so the expectation is if you're a game entering this space, you can't just promise the world and hope to get funding to make it happen. You have to show that you can execute. And I think that's like a really healthy place for us to be because there's a lot of stuff that like burnt out since then, and the stuff that survived is the people who are able to actually make the product. And so the bar is being set a lot higher.
A few years back, there was a lot of hype around Web3 games and like fully defining a Web3 game as a Web3 game. And there was a lot of ideas being sold, but money being poured in, and there was a big focus on building a massive like AAA game to break into Web3 in the masses. I think now we're kind of shifting into, and the way we've approached it, our vision has been the same, like build a really fun and good game. The Web3 aspect can only make this game experience better, not necessarily build a Web3 game. And I think the breakthroughs are going to be more like indie games because we can innovate faster and everything's moving very quickly in this industry. So you don't want to like overbuild with everything like shifting. So I think that's where we're headed.
Really echoing a little bit of what's been shared already, but I think a big thing I've seen is it's went from really like theory to practice. A lot of the stuff happening in the previous run was like heavily theory driven, and it was people with an idea, and they were just kind of pushing that thing without understanding maybe what it actually looks like to build that thing. And I think oftentimes, like, building a great product, it's really about being in the details and like having the experience be at the forefront. So we're really starting to see real products that people are using, and I think that will actually inform the best things to come about. So yeah, I think it's really exciting, and there's also, like, I think a standard now. Previously, you didn't know who was just like blowing hot smoke and who was like the real deal, and I feel like seeing the people who have like kind of stuck through and pushed through and went through the hard challenging bear market and built and put their resources in the right places, that's kind of what we're seeing now, like, pull ahead. So
now that the space has changed a fair amount since, you know, that 2021 cycle, and we're in 2024, and who knows, I mean, we're somewhat in a bull, things are up, tokens are up, everything's exciting, you know, there are rounds going out, new tokens being launched. How do you guys, each of you, how do you keep your teams focused on the mission at hand with there being so much talk around, like, oh my God, tokens are through the roof, but ultimately the product still has to speak for itself beyond anything you do with tokenomics. So how do you guys continue to keep the vision and focus on, hey, how do we iterate and build a really dope product that people can be proud of?
I'm lucky enough to have started this company with 5 of my good friends, and we each have our own specialty. And so for me, like, I'm just a game designer. I don't know anything, truthfully. I mean, I know a little bit now, but going into this, I didn't know anything about Web3. I didn't know anything about the tech. I just know how to make, hopefully, fun games, right? And so how do I keep focus? We have other founders whose focus are, you know, the tech side of things, the token side of things, the legal side of things, all this stuff. And the way that I keep myself and my team focused is really through self-flagellation. I look at the game and all I can think of is all the stuff that I've done wrong and I want to make better. And so really it's just about trying to achieve the impossible perfection, right? It's just like, how can I make this experience better? How can I make this more fun? And I just assume, and I know that the rest of my founders are doing the same thing with their areas. How do we make the tech better? How do we, you know, figure out how to integrate blockchain better? All this stuff. And so it's just easy for me because all I need to do is focus on my piece.
I would say we've been through this before, and there's a lot of noise. So it's really important to, like, find balance, and we can get, like, super excited and fall into, you know, emotional decisions, but we just have to constantly go back to what our main goal and drivers are. I think there is you have to be super strategic, and basically the market right now, like the whole token, you know, market and everything that's happening in the bull market, like finding a balance to capture that momentum while also staying, like, very focused on delivering for the long term and creating a sustainable ecosystem is really, really important. And if you can find that and stay compliant and take advantage of, you know, the one-time opportunity that we do have in Web3 to, like, break through in a new way. Because I think with even, like, Web3 and earning mechanics and, like, play to airdrop campaigns, we have a very, very unique opportunity to tap into, like, global markets, emerging markets, at massive scale. And if you can figure out how to do that in the right way and, like, create a very good incentivization, like, loop, and bring them into and keep the retention, I think that's the key to all of it.
Yeah, so I think in regards to this, it's funny because the distraction, there's just so much noise in the market right now, and it's so easy, especially if you're newer in Web3, to get, like, sucked in. But I think now we're getting to a point where the reality is there's been no killer Web3 app. Like, you look at the most popular social media platforms, I mean, there's influencers with bigger micro influencers with bigger platforms than a lot of the products in Web3. So I think there's kind of, like, the side of things where there's the noise and the nonsense, and though that can be helpful in some ways, I think the reality of what's going to really push things forward is starting to get real tangible products that can be used that are like Web3 first, that are considering the economy deeply, considering the experience deeply, considering the community deeply, and then through actually ensuring that all these things are in balance, that's what's going to create the new next thing. And I think ultimately, like the real builders, that's what they're here to do. And I think that's what's really exciting about, the moment we're in.
I want to keep the conversation kind of aligned with the Web3 versus the Web2 aspect, because in the way that a lot of you guys are building your products and building your companies, it's important to understand like kind of the sentiment of where Web2 gamers stand on the Web3 thing. And I want to get a sense of, as your companies are building, how much do you prioritize the thoughts and opinions of like media across the Web2 space that kind of, I would say, plagues the Web2 gamer mantra of like, oh my God, NFTs and crypto are bad. How do you guys navigate that and build around the fact that there is so much negative noise in the space? And do you see the sentiment changing a little bit as time has gone on?
I do see the sentiment changing for sure. And I do think that really what you have to do is just, I mean, everyone's going to say this and it's kind of like cliche at this point, but you just got to make the experience fun. Yeah. And I think part of making the experience fun, I know that we all like appreciate Web3 and we all believe in the tech, but like it can't be wallet first, game second, right? It's got to be game. And like from a Parallel perspective, the game itself is free to play. You can just jump in. You don't need a wallet. You don't even need to know anything about Web3. And then if you want to learn more, you can, right? And so the idea basically is just like, let's meet these Web2 people where they are. And I like to use the analogy of boiling the frog. It's like you don't put the frog in hot water. You put it in cold water and slowly turn up the heat, right? And that's how like I look at introducing these players to Web3, because ultimately as the tech matures, as the games mature, as everything matures, it's just going to be a piece of back-end tech that nobody sees, hopefully, right? Like we describe ourselves now as Web3 games, but you would never describe your game as like a SQL game or an Amazon Web Services game. That's silly, right? But like, so we need to get to a point where we're not defining ourselves by the tech we're being built on. It's just a game that people play, and that tech is actually making stuff more fun.
People have opinions, and I've learned like Web2 gamers have very strong opinions, which is fine, and that means they're passionate. But knowing what we're building and knowing the power of this technology, as Frank said, Kohji, oh my God, I'm sorry. As Kohji said, like this is back-end tech, and it's just gonna make gaming more powerful in the future and more, rewarding. So I think just sticking to that and knowing what you're building and meeting them where you need to. And there's so many tools. Like I think we've already gotten to the point now, like even just at this GDC, having conversations with some of these bigger infrastructure plays, like we're there, and there's going to be a very seamless way for Web2 gamers to enter Web3 without them like fully committing and noticing. And they will want digital ownership. Like, who's gonna say no to that when it's like literally handed to them with a click of a button? So I think we're there, and it's just gonna be exciting to watch it break through.
The tech has to be more invisible, and it just has to be an easy experience to get in, mainly. The game has to be fun. It's like, that's what games are all about. So I think that's simple, but I guess something that irks me is often like, it's like, oh, is it Web 2? Is it Web 3? Or like, we need the Web 2 people to come into Web 3. And it all just kind of sounds like nonsense, because the reality is like, good products win, and there's new innovations that are generally taking things from multiple different industries and kind of packaging those things in such a way where it's a new thing and a new experience. So I do think there's going to be elements of all these things as we evolve and get more into these killer apps or games, if you will. But I think where it changes is the way we think about it at Wilder World is there's owners, there's creators, and there's players. And it's like, how do you actually have a balanced ecosystem? And an owner may not want to actually play the game, but an owner wants to participate in that ecosystem or that game in their own way. So I really feel like from an experience perspective, it has to be super low lift and super accessible. But I think you can't just like take a traditional game and say this is a Web3 game now and tack on some like tokens or NFTs, or it's like a fundamentally new thing, and all of those things actually have to be considered in the game design to ensure that you're getting the network effects and it's fundamentally sound at really the game development layer. So I think, again, that's where there's like a huge opportunity here.
I think it's important for everyone to, the marketing in Web3 is a lot different than how you would market a game in Web2. And a lot of it has to do with early evangelists within communities getting involved and really believing in a project and believing that that project has room and legs to grow. And sometimes they're not the people that are actually playing the game, but they're the early token holders or people that believe from a monetary perspective. So starting with Frank, I would love to know your thoughts on how do you go about managing marketing and community in terms of how does your team see marketing community as like the balancing act between token and gameplay and understanding that you have a different set of stakeholders than you would in a traditional game, because some of your earliest advocates are also your earliest investors and not just gamers?
I would say for us at least has been a big challenge. We're really builders, so we're focused on the product, and that's been like a critique from our community around marketing. So we haven't figured it out. We've far from figured it out, but I do think the best products have the network effects of scale built into the product. So like, it's like you could be like, oh, like Instagram, like, are you gonna go market Instagram? And it's like, no, like Instagram was built in such a way where people get on there and they share and they wanna share their friends and the network grows. So I think, there's traditional marketing and all these things, but the reality is like if the tokenomics are sound, the game design is sound, and those things are actually programmed into the game, then you don't necessarily have to worry about marketing because the community is incentivized to go share, do what they need to do, and participate at their own level to ensure that, they're doing their part for the greater good.
Yeah, I would say it's a bit of a loaded question because in traditional gaming, you have like one market to focus on, and that's like your gamers. Whereas this is a lot bigger than that, and we started with collectors 2.5 years ago. Some of them are gamers, some of them are just collectors, and now like moving into the phase of like Web3 / meta gamers who may not necessarily have the money to become a collector, but they want to engage with their time and energy, and continuing to keep your like brand identity through the system and through the community and create ways for them to like engage is really important. And then shifting into, the greater Web2 gaming market, I think we can't just focus on one. I think it's a huge missed opportunity to just focus on one, but it does give you like, I don't think anyone's figured it out, right? But figuring out what that right balance is and retaining everyone inside of your IP and your universe is the key to it.
I don't want to be a contrarian and I don't want to offend anybody, but I think that like Web 2 versus Web 3 marketing, like what does Web 3 care about? They really only care about two things, we're being honest: number go up and clout, right? And so what does that mean? It means a lot of people talking about your game and a lot of people playing your game, because if that happens, then the people who got in early can brag about getting in early and the number will go up, right? So like my like vision for it is just like focus on the gamers that are going to play the game, and there's going to be like a trickle down effect to all that other stuff, right? Because I want to say that, and I mean, we do have a lot, like Parallel has a lot of like early adopters, holders that I really do appreciate, and I'm not minimizing them in any way, but I'm also kind of a realist as to like why some of them were there to begin with, right? And so like, I think once you mature enough, it's like you start with Web3, you focus on the holders, the collectors, whatever, but once the game's mature enough to go to the wider gaming audience, just focus on those people, because the people that were there early will get what they want, hopefully, if the tokenomics are sound and blah, 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 but like, yeah, hopefully.
I think the exact same thing. I think that ultimately, whoever's in the space and playing games and playing your game, like, they're gonna have their own motivations. You can't solve for everybody or solve for everything. And some of the projects, maybe even non-gaming, but if you look across the NFT landscape from like 2021 to now, you look and you're like, damn, some of these projects, they either don't exist or they've gone down so much. And in the world of business, especially in Web3, if your project goes down, you're immediately considered like a rug. But it's like in the business world, that's just a business struggling or trying to figure out, what the market truly looks like and iterating in the process. So I think it is very important to note that, like you said, there are going to be multiple stakeholders for multiple reasons, and you just got to know what you're building for and stick with it. But the next area I want to jump into, and this is one because pretty much every game has this dilemma at some point where you're trying to pick a blockchain. And I'd love to get you guys' thoughts because from some aspects you've had to pick for various reasons, but the blockchains that you're building on, what are some of the main reasons I would say that pulled your team to say, we want to go in this direction for this product and this blockchain, or vice versa? What are those reasons and rationales when you're thinking of picking a blockchain? I know some of it's for the tech, but it could be for other reasons as well.
Yeah, I think our strategy is don't pick anything until you have to, because everything is evolving so rapidly that it's really critical to hold out as long as you can and make decisions or pivot. You can always pivot later, but I think that's our approach. We have not yet chosen certain things. We've built a chain agnostic platform for all of our users, and we've launched NFTs on Ethereum and Polygon over the last 2.5 years. So I think remaining flexible and pivotable as much as you possibly can in this current state of the ecosystem is really important.
We're on ETH right now, and I think there's the whole infrastructure movement happening. I think ultimately it'll be cross-chain, and there'll be a way will the chain really matter in the future? So I think that's probably where we're headed. Right now, the way that we're thinking about it is we need high throughput, we need no gas, we need the ability to mint. We're building a virtual world, so you can imagine in that world everything is an NFT. So it just needs to be a lot more sound and easy to use and high scale. So we've been working on a new chain now, and it's coming soon.
First of all, you introduced me. I'm the game designer, so I'm Web3 oblivious. So take this answer with a grain of salt. But honestly, I think that if things mature correctly, we're talking about making the choice between Xbox and PlayStation and whatever. I was going to say Sega because I'm an old man, but yeah. But it's almost like a console thing. It shouldn't matter in the end. Obviously there's some tech limitations and whatever, but as far as those choices are concerned, now maybe people are making choices because there's more liquidity in this chain, or there's more action in that chain, or people are talking about this or whatever. And that makes sense when you're trying to acquire people, but ultimately there's going to be, there's enough people in this room that are innovating. There's going to be innovations that are going to allow you to succeed on whatever chain you choose, right? So I don't think it matters that much in the end. Obviously we're here for Saga, and they're going to allow people to have a lot more control, and the presentation was pretty impressive. But I think that at the end of the day, really what you've got to do is just make sure that the fundamentals of your game are sound, and the ownership bit of it is sound, and if you're going to incorporate tokens, that's sound. And then, the chain stuff will figure itself out, right? I'm not too worried about that, because I think that ultimately the best tech will rise to the top, and if you've built your game correctly, like you said, you can just kind of pivot if you need to.
Okay, I want to shift gears and go away from the blockchain now, and then go into your domain. So I think this is the perfect question to start you off with. But in the process of game design and building a loop that is, to your point, fun and something that people want to repeat. I said it myself, when I first jumped into Parallel, I was like, oh man, I wasn't expecting it to be a card game. And then I played it and it was like, wait, this is actually pretty legit. It's not hard to pick up, and there's a skill gap and a level. There's damn, you got to actually learn and know a couple of things to make this work. But what are some of the biggest aspects of game design and creating that loop? And how do you go about iterating on that loop as you have more feedback and more players over time?
That's another good question, and I love when people are surprised that our game is good, by the way. How do I go about making those decisions? I'll be honest with you, this may make me an egomaniac, but I just made the game that I wanted to see. Like, I grew up playing card games, and I was just like, okay, these are my favorite games. Let's take all the elements of those games that I like and smash it into this game. And I wasn't really thinking about anyone else. The truth is, like, we were about 75% of the way through development, and then someone in the team was like, wait, do people even care about card games anymore? And I was like, I fucking hope so, because we're building one. But so it really wasn't about like tailoring it to this or that. It was like, I know my people, and hopefully they'll show up for us. And I mean, they have. And obviously now with Colony, it's a little bit different because we're building something a little bit unique. But really, I think if you have passion for what you're building and you have passion for gaming in general, the best way to do it is just to look within and see what excites you. And then hopefully there's enough people in the gaming sphere that get excited by the same thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on behalf of our like game designers and developers. So I think initially we were very much inspired by like Hades, like a Hades in space. And then our lead game designer wanted to like innovate this, because like we're not here to just create another game just with Web3. Like we're here to create an innovative new game and new experience. So like coming up with a trading card twist to add to like a Hades roguelite genre, it was a big breakthrough for us because it definitely like adds another level of strategy and skill into traditional gaming, and like merging two worlds and then adding a meta layer on top. I think that's like our design strategy.
We're really developing it's a metaverse open world simulation, and there's multiple layers. Like there's the game, but then there's kind of the economy and just the open world where you can go experience and do things. So from that perspective, the ultimate goal is to have like a mass scale persistent virtual world where, you know, people are living in there, they're gaming, they're doing all sorts of things. So, but to get there, you kind of need to break it down into stages, and time is actually a deflationary mechanic in Wilder World, so there's no fast travel. So we started with racing, and one that made sense from like a practical perspective given exploration in an open world. And then two, really what I like about racing is it's highly immersive and very easy to get into. Like, so our first experience now is racing, and you can kind of get in there and you're just in and you're playing and you're immersed in the experience. And then it also ties in with a lot of the on-chain stuff really well. Like the idea of modding your car is so simple. Like you go to a garage, you can mod your car. Those are all different parts. So that's kind of how we've been thinking about it initially. And then we're going to continue to layer in new types of gameplay. So we're currently working on exploration and then combat, and following that we'll get more into like grand strategy where you can harvest resources, and based on the resources you have, there's different recipes to produce the assets in the world and all these types of things. Because most NFT projects can just infinitely mint if they want. So I think an interesting concept there is how do you actually ensure that your game is scaling in the right way, and when new assets are coming into the world, they're actually being produced by the people who are playing, and it's not just like one group saying, oh, like we're gonna drop this new thing or whatever it may be. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Cool. Well, I have one more question for you guys, and this one's more of a predictive question, but I want to know, and I'd love to start off with Jenna, how do you see Web3 gaming unfolding over the next 2 to 3 years? Yes, I'm putting you on the spot and making it so like philosophical at this point.
The next 2 to 3 years, I think we're going to break into the mass gaming market. That's really how I see it happening.
I think the biggest thing that we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years is sort of, for better or worse, the culture around Web3 settle, and it just becoming more of a tech-based solution for games that need that solution. I mean, now people from the outside look at Web3 and we're like the supreme vape cloud of like finance or whatever, right? Like that perception needs to change to hey, this is actually just a piece of tech that makes sense, and we're not just integrating it because we want to tap into an audience or because we want money or whatever, but like, it's part of the experience that actually enriches something for the player, and once we get to that point, then it'll just be easy, I think.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see the first thing that actually breaks through, and that will kind of create a frame and a model which creates some context for everyone else to say, hey, like, this thing worked and it was using all this different technology. And yeah, we'll see, if not one, multiple hits.
I'm kind of in the middle here with this too. I think we have a chance to see some hits, but I also think as time goes on, the blockchain will become more and more just not really hidden in the background in terms of like, oh, people will still talk about it, but to your point, like, no one talks about ESPN being on either AWS or Google Cloud. So I think over time we will see that shift. And I do want to say I appreciate all of you for coming up, Kohji, Jenna, and Frank. Your projects are all doing amazing things, and I'm excited for what you have coming. And that's the end of the panel, guys. I appreciate you for hanging out.